Welcome to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, an IFS-informed trauma recovery coach. This show features interviews from guests all around the world as they share their impactful stories and deliver hope and inspiration through their personal post-traumatic growth. We explore and discuss resources and coping strategies to support the survivor community to thrive in their own healing journeys. Enjoy. So welcome back to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah. I have with us today Dr. Don St. John. Don has lived his life that was nothing short of miraculous. He suffered abuse in his childhood, violent beatings, and constant verbal abuse. In his early 20s, he was incapable of feeling human connection. He had poor impulse control. He drank excessively and had very poor health. By the age of 35, he had gone through 3 marriages, 3 divorces. He had very little, if any, sense of connection to his body or to his emotions. His life trajectory looked very bleak. But he went on to become a psychotherapist, a teacher, an author. And very early on in his educational career, Don realized that the box of traditional clinical psychology and psychiatry, this box was too small to hold all of these tools and concepts needed for his specific healing. So he is forever grateful that he searched outside of the box. And over time, he encountered not just tools and techniques, but a whole different school of thought. Decades of exploration have led him to construct a view of healing, purpose, and human potential into these interrelated components called the somatic, the psycho-emotional, the relational, and the spiritual. Today, he is the author of the award-winning book, Healing the Wounds of Childhood, a psychologist's journey discovering from wretched beginnings to a thriving life. He shares and teaches about the work he has done and how he has transformed his life from the inside out. He offers ways for others to do the same, no matter what the age, no matter what the beginning. So, Don, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so honored to have you here. Tell us a little bit more. Let's jump right in about this journey. You went from severe childhood abuse to now you're thriving. And I imagine that you're in a world full of human connection now, which obviously was a really huge struggle for you. So how did you get here?
That's a great question, and I could probably spend a day answering it. I want to start, Sarah, by saying that the abuse began before I was born. When my mother found out that she was pregnant, it was the middle of World War II. Her husband was about to be shipped over to the European theater to engage in combat, and she did not want to have a child. And that creates a intrauterine environment that's not the healthiest for the embryo and fetus and baby. And then I almost died in childbirth itself. The cord was wrapped around my neck. And as I think I wrote in my first book, the one you mentioned was my first book. I'll give you the name of my most recent book later on. But as I wrote, it got worse from there, And it was obviously quite intense. And at the same time, this might be hard to hear, hard to grasp. At the same time, I also, at this point in time, see the perfection of it all. And that requires a kind of broad comprehension that embraces what I call both and. Okay? It was both horrific. I mean, I wouldn't wish it on an enemy. It was, to be told every day how bad you are, how lousy you are, how ugly, to be fed that along with violent outbursts that usually resulted in a flying hand across my face or a shoe or a wooden stirring spoon on my back, that's horrendous. At the same time, I'm here describing a thriving life, sitting here enjoying my conversation with you. All of that was part of this moment. But it takes a lot of work for most folks to get to this moment where they can say, it's so wonderful.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for that, this wouldn't be here either. So there's that.
Yeah.
Along the way, Sarah, there were some profound insights. And the one I want to focus on, if it's okay with you, is somewhere along the line, I realized that even people who had what we might call normal child, and I put that in quotes, normal childhoods, still have many, many issues and challenges to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was huge because it began to break the spell of being alone.
Yeah.
Which is one of the most terrible effects of, a traumatic childhood.
That you've constructed this view of healing. You call them the 4 legs of wholeness. The Soma body, the psyche, the relationships, and the spirit. So why and how are these all connected to wholeness?
Yeah, that's another great question, and the one that's least understood, arguably the least understood, is the body. I said Soma body, because we think of the body in terms of flesh and bones. We think of the body in terms of what we see when we look at another person. We see their body.
Right.
We also see their lights, and we can see, elements of their character and personality. But if we're looking at that thing over there, it's a body.
Yeah.
The other side of that is our connection to our body.
Yeah.
That's on the inside.
Yeah.
I can't see, except through inference, your connection to your body. You can sense it. You can feel it. You can know it, but it's all on the inside. And that is not so well understood. And for complete healing, for maximum healing, to become truly whole, to sense our wholeness, those connections throughout our whole bodily being are essential.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Tell us a little bit more about this, because obviously somatic is a big word in the trauma survivors world, right? We hear somatic experiencing, we hear somatic emotional release, we hear about, getting in touch with your somatic body. How does a survivor actually do that? And what is the actual disconnect? How does the disconnect happen, and how do we reconnect it?
Wow. Again, you're asking great questions.
We're going to pick your brain today, doctor.
Pick my brain. Okay. If you look at a baby and notice how when they breathe, their whole body breathes. When they move their foot, their whole body moves with it. Or if you look at a cat moving and see, sense that connection through the whole body. And, the whole body is strong. It's also tender. It's sensual. It's heartfelt. It's expressive. We begin to lose the connections, or said another way, we don't continue to develop the connections by way of an imposed system of shoulds and should nots.
Mm.
That's the first layer that, we all experience. It
Mm.
just is a matter of the content. What should you do or be, or how should you act
Yeah.
or not act? What should you express or not express? Okay. And so to obey those rules, those injunctions, to maintain that crucial, critical, primary relationship with our caregivers, our parents.
Yeah.
So we have to conform. We do conform
Yeah.
to what's laid down.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the very first layer.
Mm.
The next layer is when it gets, the traumas, the pain of not being met,
Yeah.
not being seen, not being understood, all of which convey a message. And that message is you're not really worthy
Mm. Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
seen, to be understood, to be met, to be loved.
Yeah.
You know, it
Mm.
conveys a message that you're pretty much alone here.
Mm.
And to get some, you have to conform to the shoulds and should nots.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they can be life affirming, but
Yeah.
often they're life negating.
Yeah.
That's where we disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're disconnecting to your own body and this actually is a catalyst for you disconnecting from other people in an attempt to try to connect.
Yeah, I mean, we can connect to other people to the degree that we can connect with ourselves.
Mm. Yeah.
I like to use a metaphor, Sarah, of
Mm.
if the body consisted of 1 million tiny light bulbs,
Mm.
how many can I light up?
Mm.
And where? What are the patterns
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Depends on
what I
how they're
can
laid
light up?
out, right? Isn't it
Yeah,
would be if they're connected to each other and they're all plugged in? I'm thinking about Christmas lights and how people go crazy when a set of Christmas lights doesn't work because it messes the whole thing up. That's
yeah,
what I'm seeing in my head right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And, to the degree that I can light my bulbs and you can light yours,
Yeah.
then that electricity flows between us.
In putting these together, the soma body and then the psyche, the relationships, the spirit, this is where you're connecting, you're interconnecting all of these together, which is bringing back your wholeness.
Yes, yes. The
Mm-hmm.
psyche is the one, of course, that gets the most attention
Yeah.
because, we assume trauma to be a psychological event.
Yeah.
And of course, we've separated our psychology from the body and our psychology from our spirituality, and to some degree, even our psychology from our relationships,
Yeah.
which is why I say that we need to attend to all four of
Mm-hmm.
those. In
Absolutely.
our psychology, it's, what decisions have we made about ourselves?
Mm.
What beliefs do we deeply hold to be true? Some I mentioned earlier, like, I'm really not worthy of love.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, that's a
Yeah.
big one. It goes to the heart. When I look at my patients,
Mm.
I see that particular belief
Yeah.
and just about underlying just about all the issues that are brought into my office.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say same for myself. So I'm a trauma recovery coach, and the I'm not good enough is just it's just woven through so many trauma survivors, except for, acute traumas, car accidents, train wrecks, things like that. Most trauma happens in relationship, and it's really hard to blame your caregivers, right? As a child, that takes away from safety. Well, if my mom and dad are bad or evil or not good enough, I could die if they don't take care of me. So you blame yourself inwardly, and it
Yeah,
attacks your worth.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. We
yeah,
don't have the wherewithal, if a 2-year-old could say, geez, these guys should go to school and learn how to do this better because they're not giving me what I need. I'm gonna have to wait about 16 more years. I'll go get it myself.
yeah,
A 2-year-old cannot do that.
yeah,
And as you said, completely dependent on it's existential. They could die without parents. And we have to be careful here, Sarah, because it gets easy to blame the parents.
right,
But we have to remember they're not parenting in a vacuum.
right.
Our entire social structure kind of works against good parenting.
Yeah.
The economic pressures, the social pressures, the lack of understanding of even what it means to be human, what we need most,
Mm,
such as connection, belonging, expression, autonomy, you know, and so they're caught in a system
mm,
that supports trauma more than it does health. And, you can argue with that, but then look at the data, look at the statistics. How many people?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and
addiction. Yeah.
parenting without unhealed, when you're parenting with unhealed trauma, you're passing that trauma down, right? And that's why we have this beautiful phenomenon of generational trauma. It's there's a link there.
There is, and I would argue,
Mm,
see, the medical model,
mm, yep.
which is the pervasive model of our culture, presumes a normality.
Mm,
This is normal. This is well. When you have this symptom, then you're ill, and we have to get rid of that symptom so that you can return to normal.
yeah.
Now, when how many people do you know who've reached 50 years old without one of the following: a chronic disease,
Mm,
an addiction,
mm,
relationship distress, depression, anxiety?
yeah.
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 What's normal?
None.
Where is normal?
Yeah.
If you want a better understanding of this, I'd recommend Gabor Mate's book, The
Yeah.
Myth of Normal. Great book.
Yeah.
So is mine, and I'll tell you the title later, but I'm really impressed with Gabor's book as well. It's the same argument that what we're assuming is normal is part of the problem. And we
Mm,
all suffer from it. Again, again, I don't know anyone
mm,
who who doesn't have challenges, issues, struggles in the area of health, in the area of relationships, in the area of self-esteem.
yeah.
And I think it's why we're here. I actually think that we're here to heal means to become whole.
The psycho-emotional tenet that you have in your four legs of wholeness, you say it's really important to cultivate positivity in our hearts. So, why is that important? But also, how do survivors do this?
It's important for a number of reasons because it takes us in the direction that we want to go. You know, we want to be content and happy and fulfilled and have a sense of purpose. And cultivating positivity is a step in that movement, in that direction. And it's not just positive thinking, it's positive feeling.
Mm,
You know?
yeah.
Because because if we dwell in negativity, well, first of all, we're sending negative or stress chemistry through our body, which isn't healthy.
Yeah.
Right? We're putting out vibes that are negative and affecting ourselves and other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. So how do we start doing something like that? So I'm thinking about the survivors that are listening and they're in a depressive or an anxious state. They're still healing. They haven't really found a lot of wholeness yet, right? They're still in their recovery journey and it's difficult. It's really hard. So how do we start? Maybe a couple of small steps.
Yes. And once again, it's that both and to acknowledge the pain,
Yeah.
not to deny the pain,
Mm,
to recognize that we have to deal with what happened,
yeah.
what was missing, what was injurious, and we have to deal with all that. We have to be honest about the hurt, the grief, the
Mm,
wounds,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
not be Pollyannish.
Yeah.
So I am in no way uh, encouraging a Pollyannish denial
Yeah.
of how much it hurts.
Yeah.
That said, there is in every one of our lives, moments where we may look out the window and see the beauty in the
Mm,
trees or the garden or the clouds
mm,
and begin with that small step of cultivating gratitude.
yeah. Yeah.
And so, if we could recognize that there's a potential gift
Mm,
in all the challenges.
mm, yeah.
My mother would lose it. She'd get furious
Mm,
and even bragged about it. I was 11 months old when she
mm,
took her first swing
mm,
across my face.
mm.
11 months old.
Wow.
My fourth word, two words out of my mouth, also before I was a year old, were bad boy.
Mm, mm.
I actually saw that in writing. One of the little cards you keep on your baby's first words?
Yeah.
I saw that one day. I was going through some folders and I looked at that and said, oh my God.
Wow.
So I am I am no stranger to intense trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say that cultivating gratitude, cultivating appreciation,
Yeah.
while not denying the pain or the events,
Yeah.
expands your capacity
Mm,
and I
yeah.
think takes us closer to our true nature,
Mm,
which is spacious,
yeah. Yeah.
at least in part. It's spacious.
Mm, yeah. I love that. The expansion, I love that word. That's a word I use a lot is expansion, but I also want to appreciate you for recognizing, not getting Pollyannish, right? Not getting into that toxic positivity. For those listening, like we are not talking about we're not talking about just saying everything's beautiful and everything's great. And that's that toxic positivity that has arose a lot in the last few years. And that would negate all of your pain and suffering. And when you're in healing, it's exhausting. It's an exhausting journey. It's a maze. It's 18 steps forward and then 1,000 steps back. And it's tiring and it's exhausting and it can be debilitating. But the small bits and the glimmer of hope, keeping your faith, which I think is just a positive step, not losing faith, having faith
Mm-hmm.
and having the belief that healing is possible, that can even be the small step. If there's only one or two things you can do today, just keep believing that maybe tomorrow will be better, so you can get yourself to tomorrow. So I want to thank you for delineating between those two things. So and for telling your story, which is really beautiful. So I know you have your latest book out. Tell us what it's called. Tell us who it's for. Tell us what the inspiration was. Share with us a little bit about it.
It's titled Healing the Wounds of Childhood and Culture,
Mm,
subtitled An Adventure of a Lifetime.
love it.
And it reflects my growing perspective
Mm,
on the healing journey it's an adventure
mm,
that has in it rewards, excitement, challenges, defeats, victories, more victories, uh, sweet rewards like the capacity to really be close to someone,
yeah.
like feeling really good about who one is,
Mm,
and
yeah.
things like that.
Mm,
And, I wrote it to contextualize this healing as an adventure
mm,
rather than as some mythical return to normal or return to some mythical normal.
yeah. Yeah. That's great. I love that. We're going to have all that linked up in the show notes below, all of your books linked so that they can find you. Where else can they find you? Are you on the socials? How can they find your book? Is it on Amazon? Is it on sale now?
Yes, it's on sale. It's on Amazon. It's purchasable through Barnes and Noble, probably any bookstore where you can order a book.
Beautiful.
But definitely Amazon. That's always the easiest and usually the quickest.
Yeah.
My website is www.pathsofconnection.com.
Yes, excellent. And they can contact you there. They can find more information about you. We always like to ask all of our guests. So, you've obviously now created a world of resources for your clients, your patients. You've come up with this beautiful concept of these four legs of wholeness. You've written books, you're teaching. When you were healing, prior to having all of these resources available to you, what were some of the most influential and helpful resources for you in your journey?
Good question. There were numerous seminars and workshops, structural integration
Okay.
slash Hellerwork slash Rolfing, all forms of structural integration I found very important because I was stuck in in a posture of someone who was beaten down.
Mm,
And, to be able to stand tall and full helped a great deal.
mm,
A movement meditation path called Continuum is
mm.
extraordinary in terms of helping get in touch deeply with one's body
Mm,
and really a way of appreciating the mystery that
mm,
is the body.
yeah.
And what I mean by that is the deeper one goes into the body, the farther out into space one can go,
Yeah.
melting any sense of a separate thing
Mm,
called the body
mm,
and appreciating the the connection to the biosphere.
Wow.
So those are the two that come to mind. I'm also a practitioner, actually a minister in a Christian church that uses ayahuasca as its sacrament.
Wow.
And that's been really helpful as well. Like just becoming lighter and even more positive. All that's on my website. My website at this point isn't so much about my own work, my own teaching, because I'm 80 years old in 2 weeks.
Wow. Happy
Yeah.
birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. And my website's more a list of resources than anything else. So it's really great to check it out and see the books, other people's books, and disciplines and practices that have been important in my journey and continue to be. I don't consider myself healed. I don't know if there's any such thing. It's again that both and like yes, I feel perfectly content right in this moment, and there's always more to go.
Exactly. Yeah. So refreshing. Don St. John, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing this inspiring story. I did notice that about your website as well. There's a lot of really helpful resources on your website. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're bringing that word, to trauma survivors who are looking for different ways to heal, because it's never going to be a one size fits all. That's one of the biggest things that I preach. Everyone has to find their path. So the more that we can resource, the more things that people can try until they're finding that they're at a place where they're a good maintenance level. And yeah, I agree that healing's never really done, right? It's just every bit of it gets a little easier and a little bit more fun as you go, and a little bit more enjoyable, and you find more peace as you go. So I just want to acknowledge your story and thank you for sharing it with us today. I'm going to have all that, the books, the website, your contact info, and I will have all those resources that you listed. We'll have those all linked up in the show notes for those who want to click on those and check you out. Don, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening or watching this episode of Trauma Survivorhood. For more info, show notes, and links, check out the episode guide below. Until next time, be well, survivors.